Thank you guys so much for joining me with Pat Fitzgerald here. We are going to be talking about different elements about how to build a career, not only how to build a career from his experience, but just what his industry has been doing in the making when it comes to the development of like high-end technology, of like the AI influence, the influence of AI, but not just the influence of AI, but just the overall influence of what it means to build a career in today's society. Because so many times, especially now, Pat, it feels like the job market is super saturated with all sorts of different talent, all sorts of different opportunities, but it feels like there isn't enough like space for people to be able to find like an entry position right away.
Yeah.
Especially like if you went to college for something so specific.
Right.
Sometimes you're left like being like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to like grapple with the fact that I have this degree? I know that there's like the need for what I went to school for what I studied, but sometimes it feels like, oh, but I can't find the job I want.
Right.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, and how you even got started in like headhunting and stuff.
Yep. I appreciate that, Grant. So,
yeah, of course.
So I've spent now the last 40 plus years in the staffing and talent industry. I've been blessed to be it. My personal salvation is I got saved at an Assembly of God church in an Easter cantata, and the gentleman that took me through the sinner's prayer was a headhunter.
Oh, really?
And from that point, I was in an industry. I was doing very well. I had a great job, and God told me to give that job up and go to become a recruiter. Okay. And so I went to work. I had a wife and 2 little kids and a mortgage. I went to work as a recruiter. And in the early days in recruiting, I was being paid $200 a week draw against commission.
Yeah.
And I was the only worker in the family. My wife was a stay-at-home wife.
Yeah.
So God blessed me in an amazing way. So my personal salvation has everything to do with how I ended up in this space. And I've spent my career both on the agency side, where I am today, and on the corporate side, where I've worked in some of the biggest and most impressive high-tech companies in the world, and I've been blessed to be a part of that. The agency side is very different than the corporate side. The corporate side is a place where you really have to go out and know the marketplace.
Yeah.
So I headed up recruiting at a couple of tech companies, Siebel Systems in the early days, and then SAP. I spent 12 years running talent there, and then obviously I moved into created an executive recruiting function, and I led executive recruiting at SAP for most of the 12 years I was there. Yeah. I left there now 10 years ago, back in the agency side, and we're still very active in the tech space. So my background has been in the technology.
So the main thing I really wanted to focus on was the idea that, like, as I said, a lot of jobs are saturated right now, and especially in the tech industry. And now you're seeing like people who even went to college for things like computer science and for coding and all these different things. Mm-hmm. Now their job is almost becoming irrelevant with AI and stuff like that. So like, and this can be applied even outside of technology and stuff like that. But like, how would you say to people, like, how do you not only like sharpen your skills right out of college to be able to appear as like the best candidate you could possibly be, but how do you like set yourself apart? Because it's easy to be like, oh, I got this education. Well, so did 5,000 other people. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So what makes you really stand out, and how do you start to plan your career out? How do you plan that career out?
So I'm going to be a little controversial, if you're willing. So generationally, it's evolved. That question has dramatically evolved. My generation, some of the people my age worked 40 years in one company. Yeah, we just don't see that anymore.
No.
Today, these younger talents, these younger early talents, are leaving companies within 12 months or less. That's a flaw too. Both sides can be flawed.
Yeah.
The biggest important thing that we can share is, first and foremost, let's go back even to high school. first and foremost, in today's world, if you read any of the normal economists, the economists have shifted their mindset over the last 2 years, 3 maybe, where if you read any of the economists, either side, left or right, they're now saying that you're better off to get into the blue-collar industry and back into the, and if you're an investor, look at the blue-collar space, where 2-3 years ago,
So like utilities and stuff like that for investors,
plumbing
and
and
stuff like that.
electrical, the electricians and,
Yeah.
and
Like investors in terms of like just public companies or just investors
or,
like
so there is still always a trend, and I'm a firm believer that in America, if you can be self-employed or you have your own money and you want to invest, you can invest in small businesses. You don't have to just invest in the stock market. And so what the economists are saying is if you're going to invest, you should probably look into buying a storage company or a plumbing company or a, if there's a plumbing company available where you can buy it and still keep the employees.
because the plumber's never going away.
Right.
None of that's ever going to go away. So.
And if you've ever read The Millionaire Next Door, it's the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers that are the millionaires.
The
next
garbage men.
Right. These people, they work hard and they make good money, and the economy rides on the backs of the small businesses. And so I'm a small business owner, so I believe firmly that you can invest in the stock market, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not suggesting you can invest in Bitcoin, whatever your preferences are or your knowledge is. But the economists are out saying, don't just stay in the tech space.
Well, now all the tech space is overvalued. You
Correct.
see NVIDIA reach a valuation of $5 trillion. And it's like, well, at any point, it's all going to pull back.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, they're still going to be a profitable company,
Right.
but it's not going to hit the new highs that we've been seeing in the past, year, basically.
Well, and with AI, everything's going to change. And we can talk about that too, because AI is going to affect a tremendous amount of positions and roles in the future. And we can talk about that too. But stepping back, so high school students getting out of high school at this stage, I'm a firm believer in if you're comfortable, join the military. Not everyone should go to college, and I think that's a good thing. But there are these trade schools and blue collar apprenticeships that you should look into because, frankly, talk to any electrician. They make really good money.
They do.
I
mean, on average, it's like now is an average salary starting out, like as an apprentice or something, you're going to be making 40, 50,000 right off the bat.
Easily. And maybe even more, depending upon if you're a union or a non-union. And again, I'm the politics of unions and non-unions is incidental. I'm just suggesting that be more creative and know yourself as a young person, right? College is great. And there's nothing wrong with college. No. Spend your time at college learning something of value. A lot of the degrees today don't correlate to any industry.
No.
So, unless you're going in for, programming or computer science or a doctor or a lawyer, there are very specific,
but like for
degrees.
instance, getting a like a rounded liberal arts degree doesn't mean anything.
No.
It doesn't equate to like, oh, you can do X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
It's just like I have a degree.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
cool.
So now you take, so again, my guidance when I was leading interviews and hiring a lot of people for the tech industry, I would meet a lot of young talent, and these young talent are smart people. I mean, there's nothing, but what I would try to explain to them in the interview is that your degree tells me you can learn. Converting academia to real world technology isn't easy. And it doesn't correlate very simply.
What would you say is like the hardest thing for them to like come from? Okay, I'm learning this,
right.
I'm learning all these different things, like let's say coding, right?
Yeah.
How does that change, and how's that like basically learning curve?
Right,
because you're still technically learning, but how's the learning curve into now I'm working and making this work for
your value becomes more. Your value in your career becomes more relevant as you go from academic experience, which is head knowledge, to actual hands-on. And the more hands-on, the more you actually are valued. Yeah. And the more hands-on you are, and depending upon how many mentors and how many trainers you have over you, you might learn a lot of different things that you would never have thought of, in the academic experience you have.
Exactly. I mean, because like at least this is just talking from my experience. I feel like I learned more from my internship than I ever did at college.
Right.
And that's just because
Exactly.
you're literally doing it in the moment.
Exactly.
And you have to figure, like, if you don't know something,
Right.
you're figuring it out.
Right.
Or at least learning from someone who's
Right.
figuring it out
Right.
in the moment.
Right.
But
And so as a young talent, there's a bunch of things you want to think about. But the first thing, if anything resonates tonight, the one thing that I hope you understand is your first job and even your second job is your learning process. Stay with it. The mistake I believe, this is my opinion, the mistake I believe early talent's making today is they get into a job, they learn a little bit, they think they should be promoted, and instead of staying with that company and getting a promotion in that company, which is what we look for, they go to another company in short order, 6, 12, 10 months, whatever, a year. And that's a mistake because you become a job hopper. And yes, you deserve to be promoted at a certain point, but you got to earn that within the company. And granted, not all companies are great. Not all companies are led well. So there's always that challenge of, but if you're in a good company and there's decent leaders or good leaders, then stay there. You're going to learn more. And by showing that progression from one role to the next over a period of whatever, 2, 3, 4 years, your value in the market becomes exponentially greater.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I think this is the main thing of, like, people are like, oh, well, younger workers aren't loyal anymore.
Right.
And there's an element of truth to that, but I don't think it's necessarily loyalty to your company.
Right.
It's loyalty to the career.
Well, it's also
to the person.
Committing to make your career and your reputation.
Yeah. Because
solid.
it's like, if you don't care, I think this is what they mean by loyalty, and a lot of people mean by loyalty. They're not talking about, you're not loyal to me.
Right.
You're not loyal to yourself.
Right.
So therefore,
Right.
I can't promote you
Right.
in this new company that you just got in because.
Right. And loyalty to a company is only goes so far. I mean, you've got to, if you're a single person, great, you're loyal to yourself.
Yeah.
If you have a family, it's all about your family. That's the most important thing. And what's best for you and your family is the right way to look at it. But the mistakes I see, and I look at a lot of talent. I'm still in the industry, and I look at a lot of talent today. Granted, I do mostly executive, but I have a division in my firm that does individual contributor. And the reality is when we look at a lot of these young talents, they're very job jumping, and that's a huge problem. And my clients won't even look at them.
Really?
Won't even talk to them. And it doesn't matter where you came from. You could have an MIT degree. If you job change every 12 months for the next 5 years, your MIT degree is not really going to be that relevant.
That makes sense.
So you have to think a little bit about not so much commitment to the company. Again, companies are good and bad. We're always going to accept that.
Yeah.
But commitment to
I
stay.
mean, if it's really bad, no one's going to blame you for leaving.
Exactly. And that's a good excuse, and you can move on. But then you got to be particular. So I want to really talk about that. How do you find the right job? That's an important component right now, particularly for early talent. And so we can talk about that in a second. But the most important thing is to look at the way other companies are going to look at you. What's your value? And your value is by seeing promotions within your own current companies. That's an important thing. That's what we look for. That's what we look for in a resume. So do you want to shift to how to find a job?
Yeah, definitely how to find a job, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going, and like, I think it's good. Like, obviously, if you need to make money for yourself to be able to live on an income, obviously do that. But I think a lot of people get stuck in, oh, I'm going to make this irrelevant job that I don't want to be in as a career, and then basically stick with it because the dream job won't show up.
Right. But let's go back to that, because that's a critical factor. Your first and second job is just a learning experience. That's it. Now, if you're in a good company and you actually, go into a job you don't like, but it at least gets you into a company that's a great company. Once you're there and you prove yourself, you can navigate. And that's how you guide your own career. Is you're going to be within a company that you like, in an industry that you think you're comfortable with, or you want to stay in. Once you've proven yourself in that employer, now you can ask for, I want this certain training. I've proven myself, so I want to be able to advance. Exactly. And I want to move from this role to that role. And so you have to go into that company, whether it be a small company or a large company, and start to talk to, your managers or your HR leaders and ask them, how do I move into those types of roles. This is the direction I want to
Exactly,
go
yeah.
now that I'm here. So that's an important step in early talent, right? Take a job, get some experience. That first job might not even be in the same industry that you ultimately end up in.
Yeah.
But go get some experience. You got to prove that you can stay an employee and work the hours that the company is paying you for.
Yeah.
Right? That you have a work ethic.
Yeah.
Think work ethic. Those are the most important. Once you're in that company or you're in an industry, then you can start to define, because even again, I don't care what degree you have.
No.
Even if you went into a specific computer science degree, you still don't know what you're going to do. You may want to be a programmer, but down the road, you might want to be in sales, or you might want to be in product management. You're going to change as you start to realize, that there are roles that you're going to be much more inclined to enjoy. So, so you got to think about navigating within those companies.
Yeah.
But you got to prove yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is something to be said about that, because I agree with you with the fact of, like, I think there's many times where, like, something seems more shiny, like a different opportunity seems shinier, a different thing seems shinier, but you don't realize all of the other factors that you're losing when you leave that first job or second job. And I think that's something that I myself have picked up on, like realizing, oh, there's this opportunity over here, but here's what I would lose. Right. And so I think it's balancing.
And especially if you string 3 or 4 of those short stints together, it does affect your resume.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's an important statement.
Exactly. And so when it comes to specifically, because you hire a lot in the tech industry, so when it comes to specifically tech, what do you think people are looking for when it comes to whether it be programmers, whether it be people who are specifically trying to get into companies when it comes to like AI specifically? And I actually want to talk more about companies themselves and how they've implemented AI, because I think there's something to be said about the fact that just because you're implementing AI doesn't mean it's making your business more like efficient per se. Like obviously it can, but I think a lot of companies are actually losing money thinking AI is going to help them boost like revenue or something like that. But sticking with the first part at least, how do you think young talent, when it comes to tech and stuff, how do you think that they should try to prepare for like what's developing in with AI and stuff?
Well, and again, if you can lean on one characteristic that will advance your career the most, it's stay inquisitive. Stay curious. If the only thing you hear from me tonight is stay with a job and stay curious, those are the most important things. When you look at the industry, and especially right now, as I look at the tech industry, and my clients across the world are all buying AI technology. A lot of them, I don't know how they're going to use it, but they're all buying it because it's the most. So So as an early talent, you want to look at the industry where it's going. So you got to do your own homework. It's really important for you to do your own homework, because AI is going to wipe out certain jobs in a year. And less.
And I think the problem is that a lot of people get scared and they're like, oh, AI is going to replace a bunch of people.
It is.
But it's going to replace jobs that weren't efficient.
But it's going to create other jobs that actually need to monitor that AI function.
Yeah, exactly.
So AI is great, but it still has to have a personal component.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So you got to do your homework, right? Call centers probably be the thing of the past, right? Yeah. Benefits, hotlines, those sort of things. A lot of that's going to be automated. Let's talk about finding a job. So early talent, right now, I talk to a lot of them, and I hear from them, they're all frustrated because there's no jobs for them. And what I share with them, and what I'd love to share tonight, is you as the individual have to do your homework. And in the interview, and we'll talk a lot about the resume and all that too, but in the interview, you've got to do your homework. You got to differentiate yourself. If you're in an interview and there are 100 other people interviewing for it, what makes you different? And if you haven't done your homework and look at the company and go to LinkedIn and look at the individuals that you're gonna interview with, and don't create a personal connection, or better yet, have knowledge, none of them are going to remember you.
No.
So you have to think about it. But let's step back. First of all, a lot of people today don't even know that a resume is critical. right? No more cover letters. They don't work.
No.
But in today's world, even before AI, a lot of companies, big companies, were offshoring the review of the resume. And so the reality is that offshoring it was putting it out in the hands of a junior person that was only looking for buzzwords. So you have to think about it. But now you take it to AI. So most of these big companies are going to put the resume review into AI. And so that means AI is looking for keywords. Right? The job description says these key components that they want.
So if you're not including that, like let's say in your cover letter or whatever they want you to include,
right,
the AI is going to be like, well, they're not even
going to check boxes and doesn't check enough boxes and it passes you. So in a resume today, cover letters are no longer relevant, so I wouldn't suggest it. And the AI bot or the offshore person is only going to read the first third. And if they don't see enough of the keywords, so in a resume today, even if you're just coming out of college, you still have experience. And so your resume should be chronological. It's a simple one, right?
Yeah.
Most important, recent has more content, and the ones after that have less content.
Yeah.
But what you need to start to think about, in my opinion, is every resume should have a summary.
Okay.
And that summary is the only thing that's fluid on your resume. The chronology stays.
Yeah.
And so if the job description says we need this, this, and this, then somehow or another in your resume that has these key words, your summary has to kind of point to it and show that. So you got to write a paragraph and a half in your summary that actually says, I've done these things. Look below, even though you're going to say it differently. So you've got to recognize that the best avenue to get an interview is actually knowing how resumes are being read.
Yeah. And that's simply by making a custom resume.
Correct.
And just being like...
It doesn't have to be custom. The chronology is important. You have to show it.
Obviously.
But it's the summary. And the summary will articulate those keywords if you can do it properly.
Exactly. Now, since they are using AI, is there fear that applicants are using AI to write the summary?
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. I see a lot of resumes, and I can tell a Chat GPT resume from your own.
Yeah, definitely.
And that scares me.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to personalize it, and you got to make it real. And by the way, it has to also be the same chronology as your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people don't recognize that. When I look at a resume, especially someone I want, in a role that I'm recruiting for, first thing I do is go to LinkedIn. If the chronologies don't match up,
no,
I'm not going to.
Well, I think it's because I've actually heard this before by people who actually like give advice and stuff like that. They actually say, post your jobs on your resume by relevancy. And I'm just like,
chronology.
Nah, yeah. Because the same thing, as you said, the same thing goes for LinkedIn. I'm expecting a chronological order.
Right.
I'm not expecting like.
And if you don't see it, there's a gap, it causes me to say, do I trust you? Or if I'm comfortable and I like you as a candidate, I'm going to go and ask you. And if you don't have a good answer, it's going to be a problem.
Exactly, yeah. And so when it comes to, like, let's say a company approaches you, right?
Yep.
Company's like, hey, we're looking for this type of person. What's your first, I get, from the perspective of people who are maybe in your industry, maybe it's an executive role, maybe it's a manager role, whatever, and they're hiring you or hiring someone like you to find that person. What are some of the first things you ask them, and what's your process like for that?
So there's two ways of doing it. The bulk of people getting hired today don't get asked, don't get headhunted. I'm a headhunter.
Yeah.
I recruit, I chase people.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking for a key executive, I'm in the marketplace looking at the competition, and I'm going in through my network and I'm looking at who can do this job. So that's a different scenario than most of the early talent and middle management. If you're an early talent, you're going to go apply for jobs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As much as I love LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is a brilliant tool, I wouldn't apply for any jobs on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The reason is that anything that's posted on LinkedIn is saturated, and so
very much
the likelihood is they got way too many applicants.
Yeah.
If you're going to look at a specific industry or particular types of roles, you should go into into LinkedIn and start to look at companies.
Yeah.
And decide what companies you'd like to work for.
Yeah.
and do your homework, right? Are they led properly? Are they have good leadership? Are they doing, are they making money? Is their ARR increasing every year? But then go to their website and apply through the openings on the website.
Yeah.
Don't apply on LinkedIn because, again, LinkedIn, anything that's posted on LinkedIn is oversaturated.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and like, not to mention too that like, I would imagine that some like, whether it be their HR arm or like whoever, I bet they kind of get annoyed at LinkedIn in general because there are people who try to apply, then it might not fully be done. Like their application might not fully be done on LinkedIn, especially. So then they just like probably ignore it sometimes.
I'll give you a good example.
Just like fair enough.
I have a new client a gentleman that I've known for a long time just went to work for another big international company. He called me today, and he said, "I need your help." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "My team recruiting today is no longer old school. It's pretty much social recruiting.
Yeah.
Post and pray, right? These HR people and the recruiters are posting on the job boards and on LinkedIn and hoping for the right person." My friend said to me, I've got critical openings. These are individual contributors, so they're not senior managers. I've got critical openings that I need to fill. My team is posting, and Pat, they're getting killed. They're getting flooded. Thousands of resumes, and 99.9% of them wouldn't even fit, don't even remotely fit.
Yeah.
He said, so I need to shift the model. And I explained to him, I said, that's easy. We can take you from social recruiting, passive recruiting, to an active recruiting model where we can give you a recruiter that has a network in that space, and they know exactly how to go hunt players in those
and stuff.
So the problem is again, for early talent is you're in the midst of this massive, the market is still down. I think 26 is going to ramp back up. So I think 26 is actually going to be a good year. But right now the market is still down. And so these companies are getting inundated when they post, positions. If you're going to do that, think about the resume. And then if you actually get the interview, which, we hope you do, you have to differentiate yourself. You have to do your homework. You have to learn about the company. You cannot go into an interview and sit back and say, impress me. The interviewer isn't there to do that.
No.
The interviewer is trying to find someone they can relate to and actually they want to work with.
Yeah.
So you, as the candidate, need to go in and impress. You can't sit back and say, impress me. When the market's booming, you can do that. But we're not in a booming market. We're in a flat market right now. Yeah. And so you have to do your homework. You have to learn about the company. You have to read their recent news releases. They just delivered this new product, or they took on this new client, and have 2 or 3 really relevant questions to ask in the interview, so that the interviewer actually recognizes that you're interested.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a difference.
Because it's not just a job. These are the people you're working with every day,
right?
So they want to see oh, are you going to care what we're doing?
Right.
Because it's like, again, back to the conversation about loyalty. It's not like about like they want to see you like eat, sleep, like run with them at all times. Like they just want to see that you're like remotely just interested in what you're doing.
Right. And I want to work with that person. I think I can work with this person. I think we can get along and learn from each other. And that's critical.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
returning to the one conversation I want to explore is, do you think that there are a lot of companies out there? So like maybe not, I'm not really talking about tech industry companies, but like, do you think there's some companies that are trying to implement AI just for the sake of implementing AI?
Yeah, without really understanding what it is. I mean, I think a lot of big companies recognize that they have to take this as a process. But if you take the tech industry, we're seeing a lot of these massive tech companies, the likes of Google and Amazon and Microsoft and SAP and Oracle, they're buying other AI companies because they want to be in the AI business. They're not necessarily able to create it themselves, so they're buying it. And it's a huge add-on for their current product line.
It is. Yeah.
Whatever it is, whether it be data centers or applications industries or security or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're going to continue to see this massive merger
Yeah.
You know, just like we saw OpenAI just commit to, Amazon. So that's a big partnership in today's marketplace. I think we're going to see more of that, and these smaller AI companies get bought up by these other big companies.
Yeah.
The question is does it fit the big company's portfolio?
Yeah,
and so then there's a process once they buy these.
Just because you're an AI doesn't mean that Google's going to be like, oh, we can apply you to X, Y, Z.
Right.
Do you think some of it is so obviously they're going to be looking for companies that they want to implement into whether it be their browsers or whatever.
Right.
But do you think some of it is we want to be able to control this so that we have it for the future?
Yeah. So then you take so you've got the tech industry that's actually looking to create products out of AI to sell into the industries. And so then you've got the industries, right? The finance, the healthcare, or whatever. They're looking at AI to automate manual processes. And you're going to see a huge amount of that.
Yeah.
And yes, there are going to be a lot of rules in the next year and two that are going to be
definitely,
that are going to be changed.
Well, and one of the biggest things is with image creation, it's there's going to be I think there's going to be a huge shift of for instance, I just read today, Australia made it to where you cannot train an AI model off of any artwork, off of any kind of media, unless you have that permission. Right. So now, I think Australia and a couple other countries included are trying to make the precedent of we need to be able to protect original creations, the original copyright material of media and stuff like that.
Right, but China doesn't care.
No, China doesn't care.
China re-engineers everything.
Yeah, of course. Right. And so you see this push towards for instance, Trump signing into law about you cannot use someone's likeness unless you have their information, unless you have their permission. Mm-hmm. However, then you have companies like Sora AI already getting that permission and probably selling it to other companies already. Right. And people don't even understand that. No, because just the same way goes for any type of browser that you've ever used. If you signed up for an email for free, you already gave your consent.
Exactly.
And so all of that data has been sent to all these different companies.
Right. And you see it.
Now you're seeing it for your own resemblance.
Exactly.
So it's crazy.
But you also see it. It's tracking everything you say and you do, all your searches and all that.
Exactly.
That's always been there. But AI is going to make that a whole lot different.
Exactly.
And make it a lot faster for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it comes to these companies implementing AI, do you obviously the automation part is helpful because for instance, now you don't need a call center. Right. Now you don't need all these random things. You can just have people leave messages instead of having to keep them on the phone for 10 hours or something. Right. But when it comes to AI actually helping a company's revenue, how do you think companies are going to start using AI to increase revenue? Because you can increase productivity, sure.
It's going to be the tricky part.
Yeah.
I mean, the first efficiencies, AI is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah.
But taking them to the next level, I think you're going to see marketing have an awful lot of AI in it already is, changing the way you see marketing. And I think that's going to happen. But direct sales, it's still a person-to-person relationship.
Yeah.
Yes, the sales rep, no matter whether you're working for Microsoft or you're working for MasterCard, that sales rep still has to have leads and qualified leads and that sort of stuff behind them. And so my suspicion is that rep is going to have AI pushing a lot more data faster to those people than the old lead gen team used to do.
Exactly.
But that rep is still the rep. I don't know how a company is going to change that.
Yeah.
I think it's all going to be and I don't want to use the wrong term, but kind of the manual processes behind the scenes is going to get automated.
No, that's understandable because, a good example would be for instance, all these different AI tools that small businesses can use. So let's just say a wedding photographer, right? Yeah. Yes. Is it going to help you book clients and keep track of things? Yes. But how are you going to strategically use AI to get around the wall of, oh, this is just an automated process versus I'm actually getting people to pledge money, right? Or pledge a down payment of something, you know what I mean?
And we're seeing it already in our phones. I'm getting pinged, and I know it's AI. I know it's automated bots that are actually chasing me. I'm getting one right now, which is really interesting. we'll give you a private jet, at a low cost. I'm never going to use a private jet. I'm just saying. So you're
cool though, right?
We're seeing that, and I think and that's where we're now realizing the government has to have some sort of controls over how much intrusion should we allow in our personal lives.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I know from the perspective of, because like I for work, for my day job, I did a lot of work into like SMS messaging and the whole process behind that, and just learning, just like half of it is just the legal battle. It's not even the technical side of it.
Right.
Half of it is just the legal battle.
Yep.
But it's just the fact of like, for instance, SMS text messaging for businesses and stuff like that is regulated to the point so that all these scams don't happen. But now, since you have AI, I feel like there's like ways to get around that.
There is.
And so I think we're going to have
But AI is going to get so much, it's going to get smarter, faster, and it's going to constantly be ahead of the controls.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to see so many new ways to get your attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of it's going to be frightening.
Exactly. And, I think it's strange too, because it's like we're living in this tension of, like, for instance, 3 years ago, I never used AI for anything. Like maybe as a joke for an image creation.
Sure.
But like I never used it for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even as from the perspective of someone that's like producing like a morning show for a small TV station, like we're using it to see if the streams are being monitored.
Yeah.
We're using it to see if these different thumbnails and different videos are being sent to the right person, stuff like that.
Right.
Like we didn't even see any of this. Obviously all these companies did because they knew that it would sell, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to also see how these companies are able to keep AI free for the majority of services. Do you think that's going to be a paywall eventually?
Oh, eventually it is. Yeah. But we're going to have
people hooked on it.
Right. But we're also going to see controls eventually. And I think we have to. Right now, if you read the articles, right now, the U.S. is the leading AI developer, $490 billion. China's very quickly behind us, $180 billion. So
now,
it's not
do you think it's because China's making... because they don't have to follow the rules. They could do whatever they want, basically.
Well, they're re-engineering everything we build. Think about it. We build most of our stuff there, and they're putting bots into our technology, and they just, they're just taking it now. So
right, yeah. Now that's the scary part, though, because what was the company that made the Chinese cell phones? The U.S. banned them. Hawaii, something like that. They banned them because China was intentionally putting trackers that could track our conversations, every single little thing. Yeah. So they're like, how about no? Yeah. I heard they were good phones, though.
I worked for a big tech company that had a relationship with a Chinese laptop maker.
Yeah.
And then we realized that the laptop maker was putting backdoors into their laptops.
And
so we stopped using their laptops.
Interesting.
Now, anything coming out of China has a backdoor now. You kind of have to assume it.
Exactly.
It's just the natural.
Even though it's a comedic note, those have you ever seen those Furbies?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those were made by China, and the Pentagon banned them because they learned that they're listening to our conversations.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because people would buy them and just put them on their desk or something like that as a joke.
Yep.
And then the Pentagon was like, "Yeah, we're banning those."
Yeah. Yeah. So and again, taking it back as an early talent, you've got to do your homework, right? You got to go somewhere where you recognize the role you're coming into isn't going to be automated, as quickly as some of them will be. And I think you got to do your homework,
exactly.
So.
And I think it's also good to preface too, is just the fact, for instance, before things like Excel were made, people thought, "Oh, I'm going to be out of a job." No, now it's just a tool, And I think even though people will lose jobs, people are just going to use it as a tool and find new jobs.
But they're not going to they're not going to lose their. It's harsh because I don't believe that that's the right statement.
Yeah,
they're going to be retrained. They're going to evolve into something maybe even better.
Exactly.
My opinion, more often than not, change is good.
Exactly.
And so if your role that you're in today is being impacted by AI, there's a likelihood you're actually going to do something that's going to be even more interesting.
Yeah.
In the not so distant future.
Exactly. And, when it comes to all these different things, do you think that it's going to affect everything in the job? To an extent, obviously. The obvious answer is yes. But do you think it's going to change everything to the point of like we do things entirely different? Or do you think like we're going to generally do the same things, like for instance, use the internet the same way, but maybe with new tools? Or do you think it's going to change?
I think it's going to change dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think AI is changing everything. It's changing and all the technology that I've seen over my lifetime in my industry, AI is the one that's actually going to change it for the first time.
And because it's crazy, because like people are always like, it's developing faster than anything we've ever seen.
And it's thinking. It's learning.
Yeah.
AI in itself is learning every single day from the experience it has.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's unique. The technology that we've had in the past isn't evolving like that.
Yeah. And so for instance, something that I was watching the other day is, I think it was Joe Rogan's recent podcast episode, but he had Elon Musk on, and Elon Musk was talking about Grok. And he was saying how the hardest part with AI right now is it's not truth seeking.
Right.
Like it sees an opinion on the internet. It's like, oh, that's truth.
Right.
As an example. So it's going to be interesting to see just like the moral battle of trying to make AI into the truth telling agent that it should be. Because I mean, truthfully, it's like 50 years from now, people are going to use it as like a Google search.
Exactly.
Like what we do now. Like what does all my generation do? Oh, we're going to Google it and that's fact.
Right.
Now we're using ChatGPT and it's like, oh, this is fact.
Right.
When in fact,
Wikipedia is a perfect example.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a great example. And so a little bit I kind of wanted to pivot, however, and just talk a little bit about more specific things about what you do. So like, for instance, when it comes to higher up roles, so like executive roles and stuff like that.
Yep.
What does that process look like? Because like I would imagine it's entirely different, because like for like an entry level position or just like a mid-senior level position, you're just filling one particular role.
Yeah.
But with leadership or an executive position, you're kind of filling multiple roles, because like, sure, they're the head of one department, but they got to be able to have the dynamic skills to be able to run that department and to be able to have the knowledge to not only run the department, but also do the business outside of that department.
Yep. So at the executive level, there's a couple of things that I look for, and I'm an old school recruiter. So what I'm about to say, a lot of the recruiters that might hear this are going to disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm a firm believer at the executive level, I have to get into the client and know their culture, their clock speed, their characteristics. I can read the job description. Every company writes a good job description.
Yeah.
It's that's tactical. But that's only half, not even half. It should be less than half of what you're looking for an executive level person. Every company has a culture. Some have developed a good culture. Some have evolved unknowingly into a culture. But it is a culture.
I like unknowingly into a culture.
It is a culture.
Yeah.
And so my role is to make sure that I understand the soft skills, so that when I talk to these people, I mean, if we're looking for a methodical thinker, and I give them a hard-charging sales executive, two different personalities, I'm doing the wrong job.
Yeah.
Right? So my role today is I have to know those soft skills at the executive level, so I can help them actually find a person that's going to fit in, that's actually then going to stay, because retention's critical, and is going to grow and develop. If they, is it inspirational? Do they need a clock speed because this company is evolving faster, or is it more methodical? And those are the characteristics.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I use my personal network, but I also use AI. So I also need to know the mistake I can make is I can only stay with my own network. And that's limiting how many people I might find.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I have to look at AI, to actually show me, are there any other people that I don't know in my own network that I need to know?
Yeah.
And so I have to look at that too.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the safe way and the best way.
So are you able to use AI to not only look up people, because, AI obviously has a built-in browser, but to compare them automatically?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the tools I use in AI, you have to refine them. It's just like anything else, right? I can put in what I'm looking for, and it may give me hundreds, thousands.
Yeah.
The first scan is going to, because it's a little more generic, then I get the chance to take it and refine it a second time and a third time and maybe even a fourth. And now I'm getting down to the 2 or 3 or 15 or 5 or whatever that actually match the ones I think.
Yeah.
Right? The ones in my network. So now I'm looking at people outside of my network that fit the same
That have the
characteristics.
same kind of.
Right. So
yeah.
when I go into my network, the first thing I do is I call my friends, the executives, and say, I've got this opening. Who do you think fits? And usually my friends will say, well, this person's looking. And my answer to them is, I don't care who's looking. I want to know who fits. Oh, okay. Well, Grant fits, but Grant's not looking. Okay. I still want to go talk to Grant.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I need to know if you have maybe you are interested.
Exactly.
Or maybe you have someone that you say, yeah, I have my doppelganger over here that is perfect for it,
Yeah.
And so, yes, I have to use AI because I have to make sure that I can actually give my client a broader view of talent as I look at the exec level.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think someone would hear something like that from you and be like, oh, well, I can do it. So that means I can be a headhunter. However, and you can,
yeah.
But the thing is that you also have years of experience. You know what you're looking for. You know how to disseminate the information and be like, this is what I'm looking for versus as you said, someone who doesn't have experience is just going to be like, oh, he's looking. Let me go throw him in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what happens today. In today's world, unfortunately, a lot of the agencies are just numbers focused. They're not quality focused. And so they're just running the numbers. They're putting as many people in front of these clients, but that's wasting the client's time.
Yeah.
The client has
how many times do you do the initial interview?
Oh, I do all of them.
Really? Okay.
Oh, no one goes forward that I don't meet and I don't prep even before they go into an interview.
Okay. So, let's say they pass the initial interview with you, right?
Yep.
Then you would prep them for the actual interview.
If I present them and they get accepted and they go into an interview, yes, I prep them because I require, again, at any level of executive, them to do their own homework. They have to know the company. They have to look at, their K1. They have to look at, Glassdoor. They have to look at the leadership team. They have to make sure that it's a fit for what they want too, for their future. I'm in the only 2 closed sale. If you think about it, right? My client has a say in whether or not they buy the person, and my product has a say in whether or not they want to go there. It's a 2 closed sale.
Sense, yeah.
And so I have to do my opinion. I've always felt this way. It's about quality. It's not about numbers. It's about quality. I have to do my due diligence to make sure that the individual, is also doing their homework.
Yeah.
To make sure that this is a place and a leadership team that they want to be a part of.
Yeah. Now, when you are trying to find people, because I would imagine you would do the initial interview of what would be your minimum amount of people you would present to them?
I try really hard to present.
Obviously, people who are, let's say everyone you met is really great.
Right.
In everything you could imagine.
It's not the case.
Well, obviously not. But in that ideal situation, what would be your target of just okay, even though everyone's great, let's just say, how would you take that down and be able to give them more people who are even better?
Right. So let me go to the tactics. So I'll do a retained search. A client will call me and say, I need this new chief revenue officer.
Yeah.
They'll retain me for that. And so I will go out into the market. Me and my team will go into the market and we'll build the big funnel. Okay. Right. And so we've got 20, 30, 100 people in that big funnel. That come from competitors, that come from, that specific position. My question is always to my client, do you want a bigger than person or do you want a rising star? Because that differentiates the caliber of player that I'm looking at. And so I take that big funnel, and my job and my team's role is to winnow it down to 3.
Okay.
And so as I evolve, the first presentation with my client is I present a grouping of profiles, not necessarily their prospects, right? The candidates I've spoken to, but the client hasn't leaned in yet. And so the first presentation is always the most important because then the client gets to say, wow, these are great. I like that on this person, but I'm not interested. But I like that. And I like this. So now I'm getting definition of individual characteristics or experiences that they really want, and it reshapes the job description. So now I have a different target after the first presentation.
Yeah.
And so then I can get into the soft skills and clock speed and culture and ego and, all those dynamics that are important for that client to actually accept.
Yeah. So because I think that's important to what you said, because I think a company could be like, oh, we're looking for this executive. But even though the idea of let's say it's someone like a controller of a business or something like that, even though we know what a controller is, or we might know who an executive officer is, or whatever of whatever department they're in.
Yep.
That definition changes slightly.
It does.
And dramatically sometimes, because what a company does isn't the same at every company.
Right. On scale, can they present? Can they do a board, presentation? I mean, there's a lot of different individual characteristics that we have to understand. Again, it goes back to the soft skills. The job description's simple. The soft skills are the hard part.
That makes sense. And so how many times, is it usually is it usually trial and error? You present the first three and then they're so you find new people, or do you
the first presentation's always changes really what they want, right? Yeah. Because then it gives me an opportunity.
So the first three people are people who might get it, but probably
won't. Again, I'm not setting up interviews yet. I'm really just doing a presentation, right? I'm showing them my full funnel, but I'm also saying of these 30 people I think, could fit.
These three.
These are the three I want you to focus on. So we're looking at their profiles. Again,
that makes sense.
By permission of the candidate.
So this is even before they even get an interview.
Oh, completely.
Okay.
Right? Because it's redefining exactly what the client wants, because the client says, well, I want a CRO. Okay, well, do you want a CRO that is hardcore, or do you want a CRO that's more methodical, big deal strategy, big client strategy? Where's the strategy piece? Yeah. And I won't know that until I start showing them a few people. And so then once we show them that first presentation, again, the job description gets refined a little bit, and then I actually am able to set up interviews. Because they may want to see those first three.
Yeah.
And those first three will actually help me to understand exactly, because they'll come back and say, oh, I loved her, but I just need this more. I need more of this. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
So personality was perfect. Okay, well, that's critical, because now I know the personality, but I need more of that.
That makes
or I
sense,
need less of this, that sort of thing. And so that helps me to get to a point where I can refine my search efforts, whether it be AI or my own network, because every time I readjust the AI search, because I will readjust that AI search 2, 3, 4 times with the data that I keep getting, through the process.
Yeah.
And it helps me get better, better qualified candidates.
Yeah. And so when it comes to executive officers and just people who fill executive roles, for people who are trying to actually step into that, because obviously usually these people are okay, maybe I like the entertainment industry, but I do want to be an executive someday. So maybe I go get an MBA while I'm in school and stuff like that. What do you think they should focus on after getting the education per se?
Well, they have to
after college.
There's a bunch of things at the executive level. They have to have a company that's willing to coach them and spend money on them, right? If you're going to become a CEO, you're not going to become a CEO by chance.
No,
you're going to become a CEO by design, right?
Yeah.
And some of the best CEOs that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with some of the most amazing ones in the tech industry, they had the companies in their early days both mentor them and spend time
so they sculpt them
with training and coaching and what have you. That's a critical factor. So if you're an executive, or you aspire to be a CEO, you also have to know, are you a number one or a number two? Do you really want to be the leader, or are you the better operator behind the leader that makes the leader successful? You kind of have to know your own characteristics, your own personality too.
And what would you say is that? How do you know if you're okay, I'm the type that is leading vision or leading the executive suite?
Yep.
And how do you know when you're you know what, I really want to lead a department or something like that?
Right. So again, now you're at the point where you're leading a department, and you have two paths, right? You can become the inspirational leader, which you should be if you're leading a department, or are you more the operating officer? right?
Mhm.
Are you down into the weeds of the business and, really managing the budgets and, the talent and what have you?
Mm.
There's a little characteristic, that you certainly has to see.
Yeah.
Both can be a CEO, right? Plenty of companies have CFOs as CEOs.
Yeah.
So that, there is the operating officer per se versus the inspirational leader. Most of the most successful big companies have been led by inspirational leaders.
Hmm.
And ironically enough, most of them are being led by salespeople.
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense too to have the leader kind of know how to sell
Yeah.
in the first place. But what would you say, like, because like obviously, like, besides actually gaining work experience,
Mhm.
how does someone go for it? Because like, it's easy for, let's say people have connections.
Mhm.
Let's say they were born into a family that were executives,
Yep.
that were this. It's arguably a little bit easier for them to be able to know what that world's like, how to make connections and stuff. However, what would you say to people who probably, like, maybe they lived in like rural America from somewhere,
Mhm.
have no idea of how like the corporate world works or anything works?
Yep.
How would you say for someone to, like, the chances of them becoming a CEO of something isn't impossible, but what would you say you would say to someone who feels like, oh, I have the capacity to lead in a company or to do something like that? So what would you say would be the steps or the skills or even the soft skills? Because I think you made a very important point of why the soft skills are important in a company.
Mhm.
So what would you say to the people who are like, who basically have no connections? And that's not true, because I think everyone does have connections in some form or something. But what has been your experience in the type of people who become executives?
Well, so again, they're all types of people that become executives, and they're all successful in their own right, depending upon what they can. The experiences of the CEOs that I think have been most successful, there are a couple of characteristics that are really relevant. One is they're never the smartest person in the room.
Hmm.
They're smart enough, and they manage their ego well enough to be to be inquisitive. Remember I said in the beginning, stay inquisitive, stay curious. They're curious, they're inquisitive. And that allows them to hire people in the roles below them that are better than them. Most of the CEOs that I've worked with that are brilliant are smart enough to recognize, I'm hiring Grant because he's better in that job than I will ever be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep advancing Grant, to the point where Grant's going to continue to grow, but I'm the CEO, and the CEO has to recognize that being the smartest person in the room will not allow you to really be a successful CEO.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, the reality is, in today's world, especially the tech world, 90% of the CEOs out there are founders, right? So if you look at these small startups or the private equity funded companies, they're founder led. Most of those founders are engineers or product executives. Very few of them are sales leaders in the early stages of that company. Then the private equity firm comes in, and now the private equity firm brings in a leadership team that's a much more broad leadership team. There's a salesperson, there's a products person, there's a development person, and so now the company is actually starting to balance off, all of the requirements to grow. You can't grow if you're one person. If you're the founder and you're the engineer, you need a sales leader, you need a products executive, you need a marketing executive.
Exactly.
So these private equity firms come in and they actually bring in the broader talent.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but most of the small startups are engineer led.
That's interesting. Well, and I think it's because they have a passion to understand how to make the product and
Correct.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because like, I know for me, this is just speaking from how I think, how I operate, right? As a person. Like, if I went and started a company and maybe it grew or whatever, I don't know if I would want to be like in charge of it or something like that.
Well,
like
that's
in terms
the
of like
question.
the business side.
Right.
Of
That's
stuff.
the question is, every executive has to have an ego. He or she.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter gender. He or she has to have an ego. The question is, are they smart enough to have it in check? And that's where becomes very obvious.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think that's good though to talk about like the fact of like, because like for me, I'm definitely the type of person that's like, okay, I like developing something. I don't like managing it.
Right.
Because like
Right.
I remember even as a kid, like I would begin drawing something and then near the end I would just like do really quick at the end.
Yeah.
Because like I'm the type of person that likes to start something, to
Right.
see a vision of something, but like I don't really get into the fine details. So like for someone like me, would you say that someone more oriented towards like, oh, maybe you're quote unquote an engineer in this thing. Maybe you want to see the product come to life, but maybe you
Well,
don't know
maybe
how to
you're the
sell it.
architect and then someone else builds it,
Yeah.
right? It depends upon your real skill set too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like I've always been like, sales are one of the things I would probably never go into.
Right. Yeah.
Just as an example.
Yeah.
But
like a CMO, a CMO is a brand ambassador, and then his or her team underneath them, well, they orchestrate it. They actually, they actually develop it. So, there's a strategy piece and then there's the execution piece. Depending upon your skill set and your comfort, you one or the other.
yeah. And now in that process, right? When you are trying to find people that fit into those companies really well, how often does things like politics come into play?
Shouldn't ever.
It shouldn't, but
Never
does it?
It never.
It never does. Okay.
I don't allow it
Yeah.
because it's not relevant.
No.
Right? I mean, if a person, well, let's step back then. So this is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
If you're really a professional and you're really expecting to grow your career, you should be kind of careful with your social media. Just the reality. You can be whatever you want. I'm not saying you shan't, but you shouldn't necessarily be out there,
Posting everything you think.
Yeah. And so,
Because even if, like, let's say you were right about everything you ever said.
Yeah.
Even if you're right, it it doesn't mean people are going to see you as professional.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how you handle your social media. Because nowadays, every company, especially at the individual contributor, every company is looking at your social media. Because they want to know.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think they look at that only for work culture's sake or as you as a person?
I think they're looking at it. I think now any company worth its salt is looking at references and social media before they hire you.
It's interesting because, like, I think that digital footprint tells the company more about who you are as a person than anything else.
Yeah.
Because now, even on Instagram, they added the feature where now you can see what people like.
Right.
So all of your friends, you can be scrolling on something,
Right.
and you can see what people like, and you're like, they like that. Yeah. And then you start judging them.
Well, what you say. And unfortunately, in today's world, politics is very volatile.
Yeah.
And so, we all handle politics. It is what it is, whatever. So, you got to be respectful either side. But if you're losing your mind over something in social media, that's a red flag for these hiring companies.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's an element of like, to a point, like a company is going to be like, oh, I respect your opinion, whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's a point of like, oh, you're a hateful person or something like that. Or that it could be interpreted.
Right. Oh, they're going to be volatile in the workplace and they're going to actually, not so much a threat, but they're going to be disruptive in the workplace.
Yeah.
Everyone has to look at that. If you really want a great company, you kind of have to hire people that are going to be, that get along.
Yeah.
That don't really, find reasons to not get along.
Yeah, exactly. And how often does that happen where you're like proposing someone, then someone finds something like on social media and they're like, nah.
It doesn't happen. Again, if I do my job right, it doesn't happen.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But as an
because
individual,
you're the filter.
Yeah, right. But as an individual applying for a job, you have to expect that these companies are going to be looking at your social media.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you think that there's an element of that? Do you think that some companies care too much? I'm not saying all or the majority or even half.
There are companies that have agendas. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have clients that have social interviews. They want to know your agenda.
Will they actually ask, like, who did you vote for?
No, they won't ask that, but they'll ask pretty close to that. And that's perfectly fine. They have the right to be that.
Yeah.
A company can be one side or the other. There's nothing illegal about it, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you're discriminating, there's a problem. And
Yeah.
discriminating is an issue for sure, but a company that has a certain culture,
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure that they're hiring to that culture because
Mhm.
then it's less disruption.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it would be for instance, someone like Google, as like a wide example or whatever. Like, if you use Google as an example, they're not going to go hire a full-fledged Christian conservative to lead one of their departments.
Correct.
Not because they hate Christians, not because of whatever, but because
It's their culture.
it's just their culture. Yeah. And I don't think that, as you said, I don't think there's something wrong with it, because it's like even though Google has a certain brand, you kind of associate their brand with the type of people that run it too.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just a part of it. And that kind of goes into a small segue, and this is something we could even save for another episode.
Okay.
Sometime we could like talk about this too.
Yeah.
But how does DEI play into the hiring process? And because like from last week, we got to talk a little bit about DEI,
Mhm.
and the main thing that we talked about is what DEI should be, right? DEI should be the ability to be like, okay, I have 3 different candidates in front of me, and I'm going to choose the best candidate possible.
Mhm.
But I'm also not going to let, whether it be culture, race, whatever, interrupt that. That's the way it should be.
Mhm.
But how do you think that DEI has been misused in a certain way
Absolutely.
by companies? And
Absolutely.
what do you think maybe the solution is to those
Yeah.
companies?
So, first of all, every good company, every great company has always been focused on diversity.
Yeah.
Diversity was always a priority back before it became popular, before it became a social issue. So any good company is looking for diversity. And diversity is diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of ethnicity, gender. It's incidental,
Yeah.
but it's got to be a broad array of diversity,
Yeah.
first and foremost. Over the last many years, some companies have made diversity the only criteria,
Mm.
and that's a problem. So if a good company recognizes that diversity is always going to be a priority and has to be a priority, it should be, because it's a benefit to the company
Yeah.
done right. And it's one of the key hiring characteristics: experience, diversity, and culture fit.
Mm-hmm.
If they're using all 3 of those, they're going to be fine. They're going to hire the right people.
Yeah.
If they're strictly hiring for diversity, and I have clients that got stuck, and they did that, and these big layoffs are because they can't figure out how to use some of those people now, because they hired for the wrong reason.
That makes sense.
But again, diversity is always going to be an important component.
Yeah.
Diversity of experience is critical. Diversity of ethnicity, diversity, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Take
Diversity of background.
Right. It isn't just diversity of one issue.
Exactly.
It's diversity of a broad array of issues. And you couple diversity with experience
Mm-hmm.
and culture fit.
Because I think both extremes, at least, not like people in the middle, not like people who slightly lean left or right. I think that both extremes make it only about one thing.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right. It should be like the diversity of thought, diversity of background, but diversity of just like how you grew up.
Yeah.
Even because that conversation comes up in any interview
Absolutely.
you have.
Absolutely.
So,
and it makes the team better
it does.
when you really incorporate it the right way. But when you singularly focus on one thing,
Mm-hmm.
you create a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, a lot of companies did that for a while.
Yeah.
But I think we're starting to see that shift back.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think now companies are realizing, okay, granted, now DEI has received this negative term, right? But I think they're shifting it to, hey, we're trying to be acceptant of our applicants, of the people who work here and stuff like that. We're not trying to push any type of person away.
Well, they're pushing on
like that.
those that singularly focus, they're pushing on an agenda.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they're not hiring the best talent, and they're going to ultimately be a big problem for them.
Yeah, exactly. And so what would be some closing remarks, closing ideas to people who are watching that maybe are trying to find a job in a particular industry or whatever? What would be the biggest advice you would give to people now?
Differentiate yourself in the interview. You're interviewing, unless you're the only person the company's interviewing, which is highly unlikely. And today's market is soft. So, make yourself stand out.
Mm-hmm.
do your homework. Learn about the company. Go into LinkedIn. Learn about the individuals you're meeting. Make a personal connection. Your objective and your goal in the interview, especially in an interview cycle where you're meeting 3 or 4 people, is to have at least one of them be your advocate. Make a connection. That person in the post-interview debriefing is going to sit back and say, I like Grant. And everyone's going to go, oh, okay, I did too. But you have to ultimately make a connection in an interview cycle so that someone in that interview cycle becomes your advocate.
And how do you do that? Like what's a practical example?
Well, again, if you look on LinkedIn and you see that person happened, went to the same college or grew up in the same area or whatever, there's ways for you to look at that individual's profile on LinkedIn and see if there might be a personal connection. Be prepared to have good questions, right? Don't just ask silly questions, right?
Yeah. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, right. Why do you like the company? That's an important question, right? Because and in every interview, if you get a chance, ask that interviewer, what does success look like in this role at the beginning of the interview? Because then you can interview to the answer. Yeah. Now you can actually tailor your questions and your answers to what that person says success looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to be methodical in the way you approach the interview. Do your homework. If I can say it 1,000, do your homework. Do your homework. Go in knowledgeable. Sit at the edge of your seat. Engage. Look them in the eye. Be different.
Exactly.
Than the other people in the interview cycle.
Yeah, and seriously, that last piece of advice, I think, is overlooked because, like, for instance, for my experience, right, there's been times when I've applied to a job that I didn't realize I was disqualified for, right, just because maybe the job description wasn't that great or whatever. Yeah. But I've applied, but the only reason they wanted interviews with me was because of the way I animated myself, the way I talked about it. Yeah. Even if I didn't have any experience. Right.
Even if it's a video interview, engage.
Yeah.
Right. That's an important statement. Sit on the edge of your seat. Don't sit back and,
don't be like,
make them feel like,
what can you offer me?
Yeah. Yeah. And, don't go into the interview cycle asking what the money is, wait until the end,
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think that's a key thing because I mean, at least what I do, when I interview and stuff like that, if there's like a 2-step interview process, I don't even ask about money till the second interview.
You can't.
Because like, I'm trying to be I'm trying to impress you.
Right. It's a red flag in the interview. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the interview cycle should be for them to get to know you and you to get to know them. So the interviewers should also be trying to sell you. But I teach interviewers that to sell them, you got to like the person. So if you like the person in the interview, take the last 10 or 15 minutes and make it personal. Get into the selling mode.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So make the connection. But they don't need to, give you data unless they really think you're a viable player for the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much for coming on, and thank you just for your guidance and just like your wisdom in life and stuff like that. Because I get to meet with this amazing guy right here, and we always have a great time. But
you do, and I appreciate that, Grant. And and I'm blessed to have a life that I really am very proud of and very very exciting by. I still get up every morning bright and early, and I'm excited by the day. And so
it's really cool.
Spending time with you has just been an absolute treat, and doing this, hopefully something connected with someone and it resonates, and maybe if the people on your end want to come back and say we'd like to hear more of this or that, we'd love to go into something.
I think it'd be cool.
More detail.
I'll definitely invite you back over because I think that there's so much to talk about when it comes to stuff like this because I think it's always, obviously industry is always moving, and obviously trends change, and the way we hire the way people hire change, and the way people apply change all the time. So, because LinkedIn wasn't always a thing.
No. And the world's changing fast.
Exactly.
But next year is going to be a good year. I believe 26 is going to be a solid growth year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you so much for joining me. And next week, I hope to have John Davenport on this podcast, and I hope to see you then.